The junior mining industry earned 54 billion rand. It spent 55 billion rand. It's a loss-making business at the moment. It's a tough gig. There's 23,000 people just of our members employed. You know, the one thing that we have been fortunate is having Minister Mantashe. He's been there and he's got his hands dirty and he actually understands what a mine is. And he likes to tell people, you know, mining is inherently a deep, dark, dirty, and very often dangerous occupation. It's not a get-rich-quick gig. Unfortunately, with the best of intentions in South Africa, in the drive for transformation, what happened is assets got moved into other people's hands, not necessarily financed people and not necessarily technically capable people. And as a result, the South African junior mining industry has become a bottom feeding industry. It's become a carrion feeder because the perception was that existing mining companies had to move tired, maybe loss-making or difficult assets to juniors because they would make more money. Very often they have, and they kept them alive. And you look at where Patrice Motsepe came from. You know, he took unloved gold assets and he made them work and he sweated them, and for 20 years he's made money out of them. He's built an empire out of it. So there are instances that it works, but there's instances where it can be absolutely horrifically dangerous and misconceptions can be dangerous. My drive as a junior miner has very much been to try and get South Africa to be the sunrise industry again. Stop us being carrion feeders. Let us become the generators of the mining projects of the future, because overseas in Canada and Australia, the majors don't find deposits. They don't, in fact, very often they don't even spend the money on looking for the deposits. They leave it to a massive junior industry. They go out there, they're innovative, they know the technology, they live it, they breathe it, they discover stuff. They might start a small scale mine and then they get taken over. That's what feeds the value chain. We've got a problem in South Africa because we don't have the value chain running. What's happening at the moment is you've got the old tired mines that are slowly but surely falling off, and then they've been replaced by junior miners that come in and basically salvage what's left. But who's feeding this value chain? And it's so important in the drive for investment in South Africa and creating jobs. The opportunity of junior mining is probably the fastest opportunity to turn on jobs and investment in this country. If I take our own company as an example, over 3 years, we've spent over 400 million rand in South Africa. We haven't dug out a ton of rock yet. We've created more than 90,000 employment days. That's the kind of employment that a junior miner does. We're probably the exception in South Africa, and there may be 2 or 3 others that are doing that kind of thing. Overseas, there are thousands of companies that are doing it. The ability to turn on that many jobs and get that kind of expenditure running in South Africa is very, very simple. We've got to declutter it. We've got to get the red tape out of the way. There's all this talk about facilitating and making it happen. The one thing that probably the most successful thing in the mining charter is taking away exploration out of the scorecard. That was a huge step forward. But realistically, you know, the DMR, bless their souls, who sucked the number of 10 million rand out of the sky to put as a threshold for small scale mining and give some breaks on the scorecard. You know, Sipho and Sapporo and their 2 kids that are running a broken down old excavator and a dump truck haven't got time and don't understand how to fill in a scorecard. And they have to, because they might be making 850,000 rands a month of revenue. 850,000 rand isn't money. You know, that's, and we've got to be realistic. At the end of the day, it's the investors that dictate what is a junior. Overseas, anything less than $500 million is considered a junior miner, 5 billion rand. The fund managers, certain fund managers are not allowed to invest in junior miners. Other fund managers are only allowed to invest in junior miners. Yeah, in South Africa, we've got a threshold for small-scale mining of 10 million rand, and then a very small threshold above that for some limited removing charter obligations up to 150 million rand. It's $50 million. It's nothing. We've got to be realistic. If we want to be internationally competitive, we've got to look at international norms. If we're not applying the international norms, well, we're fooling ourselves. And we've got to get this whole machine going. We've got to get it moving. The DMR, the regional officers are very often underskilled, understaffed, under-resourced. They're trying to regulate 1,500 junior licenses. I don't know if there's 300 people employed by the DMR in this country that can do that. What you've got to do is you've got to put the right regulators in the job. We've got to put people in place that understand junior mining, and it's almost got to be a different set that are looking after the big platinum and gold mines and all that kind of thing. Because junior miners, every one of them's got their own bespoke set of challenges. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's not a one size fits all solution. And unfortunately, that's where the scorecard is. It's a one size fits all. But that convenience comes in at an expense because it's too hard. Now, what you've got to be very careful is when you create a situation that's too hard to handle, it forces people into the unregulated world. They go into the dark world of illegal mining. So the more difficult you make, the more illegal miners you have. The more illegal miners you have, the more social disease you have. The whole social fabric falls apart around it. You've got to make it user-friendly and effective. Every one of my members, 200 odd people, 300 odd people that we represent, they're all complaining that the communication with the DMR officers is just too difficult. One, they can't get access. There's just too many of them and too few people in the DMR offices. The DMR people are too worried about the big issues of the big mines. They don't have time to deal with the small things. If you get through the DMR, you've still got to deal with DWEF, and you've got to deal with the local municipality and all of these subsets of government that you've got to cut through. And the more red tape it's involved, it's just easier to move next door where there's less red tape. And that's what happens. That's why Botswana is attracting more investment than South Africa in junior mining. Namibia is attracting more investment than South Africa in junior mining. We've got better geology. We've got fantastic geology. We've got fantastic infrastructure. We've got fantastic skills and ability to do stuff. But we're not going to do it until it's easier to do it, because people will go elsewhere. They vote with their numbers, with their wallets. Maybe at a final point is, it's so important that when we speak about junior mining, we don't separate exploration. Exploration and junior mining are absolutely fundamentally joined by the hip. The moment you split exploration out of it, then junior mining just becomes a carrion feeder and a harvester. Junior mining is supposed to be a growth exercise. That is the sunrise of mining, and we've got to be able to drive that.
We used to have that in the very old days in South Africa, where people were ready to invest, but we don't have that now. We've got these big funds. So also on the private sector side, do you agree? Once this red tape is gone, we need to get someone to drive an enthusiasm in the stock exchanges to bet on these people.
I think that there is an opportunity there. I just take us again as a sample because that's what I know and I see, and there may be other stuff out there that I don't see. But as a company, ASX listed, JSE listed, so we dual listed the same shares, both sides of the water. The foreigners all hold their shares offshore in Australia. South Africans hold their shares onshore in South Africa. 17% of our stock is held by South Africans, the balance is held by foreigners. Do you know how many South Africans I've got? I've got 4 times the number of South Africans on my register than what I've got foreigners. Because you can buy and sell a share on the JSE if you go through your bank for a couple of R100 in costs. It costs you $50 to do a trade in Australia. So there is an opportunity, and I look at my register and I see small individuals that every month they will go buy 100 shares or 200 shares. So there's an appetite, there's a wish for it. Their fund managers, however, are not allowed to invest in us. And that's where the problem comes in. If I've got one of Australia's biggest pension funds as an investor into us, we haven't got a single South African pension fund investing into us. You know, that is where there is an opportunity, but it's about tax incentives and tax structuring and all of that. And Grant's busy doing some really good work at the moment, supported by one of the big law firms and accounting firms in South Africa. We want to put a proposal to government on flow-through type tax structuring, because that's what's worked in Canada and it works in Australia, because people are allowed to invest and it creates jobs and it creates employment through generating discovery. Somehow somebody's got to take the risk, but you've got to be incentivized to take the risk. It's got to be worthwhile. If you were allowed to take 10% of what you were paying to SARS, or 5%, or even 2% of what you were paying to SARS, and elect to put it into a junior mining company in return for a capital gains break that you might yield in a couple of years' time, you'll do it. And that is what drives the investment economies in Canada and Australia. It's nothing else. But it's terribly sad when you come to a conference like this and they say, geez, if this asset was just in Australia, if this asset was just out of South Africa, your market cap would be 10 times the price. That's sad. I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see people say, you know what, South Africa is changing and we will unlock a whole lot more of this. Because as a geologist, I can give you 10 examples of what we can do, what we've done at Prieska. You can do it all over again, but we've got to change the way that things are regulated.